Thanks very much. It's a real, well, I'm going to say pleasure, although it's not entirely a pleasure. It's certainly an honor to be at the first Domestic Violence Symposium in Toronto, and I hope this is the first of many to come. I'm here today as Vice President of Parental Alienation Awareness Organization. Parental alienation is a group of behaviors that are abusive to children. They separate off a child from a parent and that parent's other family. Up until recently, and recently I mean within the last 5 years or so, many groups have denied that such behaviors exist, that if they exist, they are not damaging to children, and if they are damaging to children, then it's usually the fault of the parent that's been separated off from the child. That's no longer the case. Those groups who denied the existence of parental alienation in the way we know it occurs, where should I stand here? Maybe I'll stand this side. They no longer deny that. In fact, they hold it to be self-evident that when a child is separated off from a parent, that's damaging to them and it's abusive to that child. What is even more recent that we have been pushing for a very long time is a recognition of these behaviors as a form of domestic violence. That's why I'm here today, because I think it's important for everyone to understand that when a child is separated off from a parent, when a child is isolated from that parent, from that other parent's family, when he's controlled, when power is exerted over him, that's domestic violence. We have no problem in saying that when spouses use power and control, isolate their partner, that's domestic violence. Intimate partner violence. We don't accord the same kind of response when it's a child who's being controlled and isolated. And they may be isolated as a revenge tactic toward the other spouse. They may just simply be isolated because the parent that's doing the isolating has some emotional problem. The presentation that I was going to give you here, and this is good, goes through a number of things that have happened over the last year. There are presentations that I refer to here. Thank you very much, Vern. And this is the definition of domestic violence from the Home Office in the United Kingdom. And I'm going to read it to you so that the people who don't have the presentation per se also know what it is that we're talking about here. Any incidents or pattern of incidents of controlling, coercive, or threatening behavior, violence, or abuse between those age 16 or over, and this is the United Kingdom again, don't forget, who are or have been intimate partners or family members, regardless of gender or sexuality. This can encompass, but is not limited to, the following types of abuse: psychological, physical, sexual, financial, emotional, and this is the important part for my presentation today about parental alienation. Controlling behavior is a range of acts designed to make a person subordinate and or dependent by isolating them from sources of support. Can you describe a parent-child relationship any better than that? Exploiting their resources and capacities for personal gain, depriving them of the means needed for independence, resistance, and escape, and regulating their everyday behavior. I think that's a pretty good definition of parental alienation. But just to be clear, here's also a good definition of parental alienation. The construct, parental alienation, traditionally referred to as parental alienation, emerges during and following divorce and involves the active, often covert, interruption or complete destruction and isolation of a child, its parent, the target parent, and that parent's extended family by the distorted and pathogenic parenting practice of the other parent, the alienating parent. So if you look at both of these definitions, you can see emergence by them. Domestic violence, parental alienation. I'm not going to tell you they're one and the same, but parental alienation is a form of domestic violence. I'm trying to move to the next slide here. These are some of the ways that people in the family justice field describe behaviors and how they should be dealt with. People in this field were among those who denied that parental alienation and those behaviors were abusive. They've now come around quite a bit and are seeing it certainly as abusive. And I'll read some of these off to you. These are red flags for looking at alienating behavior. By the way, this is out of the Parenting Coordinator and Parenting Alienation Restructuring the Resistance excerpts from a paper given at the Association of Family and Conciliatory Courts last week by Anne Ordway and Ruth Moore. The red flags for finding alienation by a family court. One parent always seems to have reasonable requests unreasonably denied. Less than agreeable parent always denies requests in the name of the best interest of the child. I'm doing this because I think it's better for the child to not spend time with you. And I'm going to relay what I heard in family court a number of years ago. A man who had been accused of domestic violence had been put on bail conditions which restricted his access to his spouse and the house and his children. The child, he had one child. The child was 2 years old. The charges were withdrawn. He went back to family court and said, the charges are withdrawn. I'd like access to be back to what it normally is with my child, which was approximately 50% of the time. The judge looked at him and his spouse and said, sir, there's no question in my mind that your child loves you deeply. And then looked at his spouse and said, ma'am, there's equally no question in my mind that your child loves you deeply. Sir, when your child is getting prepared to meet you for your visitation time, and he loves you so deeply, can you imagine how anxious he is and looking forward to it? And he probably won't be able to sleep the night before. We can't have that kind of anxiety with a child. You'll have to wait until 50-50 comes back again. Can you imagine? A man and a child were denied a relationship because the child really looked forward to it. So this is the kind of mantra that I think that section means. I'm looking after the child's best interest by not letting the child see you. Actions speak louder than words. A parent says they want the other parent and the child to have a relationship, but always has reasons not to promote it when the rubber hits the road. One parent uses an incorrect surname for the child. Often happens. Spouses separate, and the spouse that has the custody, sole custody often, changes the child's name. You can imagine how hurtful that is to the child to now not only be separated from a parent, but to lose the name that they've grown up with. And I can tell you that William Russell, Colonel William Russell, who went on a rampage for years and years around his home base, was a child of divorce. His surname was changed. He fought back very hard to reclaim his surname, but it's probably trite to say that he had become very disturbed. Whether it was a direct result of this, or this was a contributing part of why he was disturbed, again, I think it's trite. Even if it was only a contributing factor, I think these things are easy to avoid. One parent schedules special events for the child and excludes or doesn't notify the other parent. One parent sabotages the other parent's efforts. One parent reports the child doesn't want to go and claims there's nothing they can do. Can you imagine a parent saying, I really wanted him to go to school all year, but I just couldn't get him there, so, pass him anyway. Or he needs those cavities filled because he's in terrible pain, but he really doesn't want to go to the dentist. Nothing I can do. We wouldn't allow those kinds of excuses in those situations. We shouldn't allow them for a parent to see their child. One parent unreasonably resists the vacation plans of the other. One parent insists or promotes fear in the child. How do you do that? How do you promote fear in a child? Well, you say that you're a victim of domestic violence. You say the person that you claim is perpetrating that violence on you is targeting the child as well. And you tell the child, this is why. And it doesn't have to be true. You make a statement often enough, it becomes true. You have people support you, like the police. Authority figures, highly respected. Child's always told to respect what the police tell him, to listen to what the police tell him. Why would he doubt that the police would lay charges against somebody who was innocent? There must be a reason. He must be dangerous. She must be dangerous. I should be afraid. Not hard to do. That's how it's done. This is an interesting slide because it talks about a particular program being piloted in Toronto. It's called the Integrated Domestic Violence Court. The Integrated Domestic Violence Court only takes cases where there's been a criminal charge and there's an ongoing family dispute involving custody at the same time. Geraldine Waldman is one of the two judges that oversees that court. Rachel Birnbaum is a psychologist who is assessing the court and looking at each and every case that goes through it. And I'm sorry, I don't know who Miranda is, but those are the three that wrote this paper. And it's called Family Violence, Collaboration Between the Civil and Criminal Justice System. And these are excerpts from it. I'm just going to read these quickly for the sake of the people that can't see the slide directly. In situations of family violence, multiple justice systems may be involved, and there is currently very little coordination between them. Some examples. When the police release an accused or a decision is made with respect to judicial interim release decision makers often aren't aware of the existence or content of family law or child protection orders. As a result, inconsistent orders can result. Criminal orders can have a huge impact on family proceedings. No contact orders can effectively provide exclusive possession of the family home, sometimes in inappropriate cases. All of us know cases where there's been an exclusionary order, where there's an exclusive possession order, not appropriate, in cases where the charges later are dropped or the charges can't be substantiated. And enormous harm is done both to property rights and to child-parent bonding as a result. And we heard this morning about how important those initial years are for child bonding. And when you completely remove a child from any kind of contact with a parent, there can be no bonding. Criminal and family court systems operate separately from one another. Family members may have multiple appearances in different courts at different times on related matters. In at least one jurisdiction, the family and criminal courts are not even in the same building. This can mean having to tell the same story multiple times, missing many days of work, all at a very stressful time in people's lives. Family and child protection proceedings are sometimes delayed as a result of criminal proceedings. Counseling and sometimes even negotiation may be precluded in the family context because of no contact provisions in a bail order. A bail order comes as a result of a presumed harm that's been done. No harm has been proven. Maybe no harm exists. Family court has no tie to what's going on in that criminal proceedings, but makes assumptions because there is a criminal proceeding in existence. Not because there's been a decision made, but because one exists. It has a tendency of siding on the side of caution, and I don't have a problem with that personally. I don't have a problem with that having gone through all of the things that I understand about parental alienation. I do have a problem with how family courts view harm. They view harm as something committed by a potential perpetrator against a potential victim. They don't view harm as the separation of a parent from a child. The harm that's done there is ignored partially because it wasn't recognized and maybe for other reasons as well. That's got to change. When family members are accessing family justice services, there's a lack of knowledge about parallel or related proceedings or orders. They may participate in inappropriate services, for example, mediation. Mediation is not always appropriate. You can't mediate a problem when you have to speak to the problem. This slide shows excerpts from best practices guides for family court decision-making in domestic violence-related child custody matters. And I want to point out to you that this is posted by the Battered Women's Justice Project. This is done presumably from a feminist perspective. I can tell you when this presentation was made, though, that the people here who have spoken before me, who will speak after me, have had an enormous influence because they said we don't come here with any preconceived notion whether domestic violence happens more often to women than not, whether domestic violence is a 50-50 proposition of victims and batterers. We don't make any preconceived notions. I tell you that you would not have heard that kind of statement from anybody except those in this room 2 or 3 years ago, let alone from someone in the Battered Women's Justice Project or anything like that name. So again, for the purposes of those that can't see the slide, I'm going to read through this quickly. Physical or sexual abuse or neglect of a child. Decisions and behaviors that directly harm the child's physical safety, security, and well-being, including but not limited to, and don't forget this is in a family context, family court context, hitting, punching, slapping, pushing the child, using excessive coercive discipline, refusing to tolerate age-appropriate behavior, violating the child labor laws, denying food, clothing, necessary medical care, forcing the other parent to participate in child abuse, abducting or threatening to abduct the child, forcing the child into criminal activity, promoting truancy, having inappropriate sexual contact, sexually exploiting, grooming the child, exposing the child to pornography, using the child in pornography, forcing the child to have sex with others, violating the child's physical privacy, abandoning the child, exposing the child to drugs, willfully violating health or housing codes, and There is a second slide here from the same group which defines pretty clearly domestic violence and the interrelation of it with parental alienation. It starts off, emotional abuse of child, and this comes straight from the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which is a psychiatrist's code for for diagnosing illness.
Robert, I'm just going to interrupt. We really need to get things moving along. The Aaron Pitsy is very tired. So I'm just wondering if we could, I don't know how much more you have to go.
I've got 3 slides, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
She's very tired.
Yeah. I'll read through these.
Don't worry.
Don't worry?
No.
Okay, I will go a little bit more quickly, and I won't worry at the same time. Emotional abuse of child, this comes from the DSM directly, wide-ranging decisions or behaviors that directly or indirectly harm the child's emotional safety, security, development, and or well-being, including but not limited to rejecting the child, denigrating the child's feeling, calling the child names, making child feel stupid or inadequate, demanding demonstrations of affection or loyalty, isolating the child from friends or family, embarrassing, humiliating, or shaming the child, promoting gender bias or disrespect of women, refusing to meet child's basic emotional needs, creating a chaotic or unpredictable home life, missing visits or appointments, exposing child to violence, modeling bad behavior. I won't go on about these. These are very much what parental alienation is. These behaviors clearly define what will separate a child's emotions from a previously good bond with a parent. I'll leave this up for a minute, skim through it. This paper is available online, by the way, and the reference for it is at the very top. I hope that this has been of some help drawing awareness to, number one, what parental alienation really is all about, and that is domestic violence. I hope you see the relevance of it being here today at this conference. I do want to put in one plug that parental alienation has April 25th as a day of awareness around the world where people do things to draw awareness in their community. They have proclamations drawn up by local councils, local governments, cities, towns, declaring April 25th as Parental Alienation Awareness Day. We had over 250 of those from around the world this year, and we are going to add domestic violence into that awareness campaign. Thank you very much. I appreciate you listening.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks. I appreciate it.